Hi, welcome back to the channel. It's me. Today we're going to be talking about sustaining your motivation. How do you keep up your focus, attention, and momentum when you're learning in an online environment? Let's dive into it. A few weeks ago, I talked about how to find your motivation when you're starting out. But what happens once you get started? How do you keep that momentum going? That's what we're going to talk about today. So let's just start off by saying this is a really challenging question. Even people who are seasoned learners and have been doing this online learning thing for years still struggle with keeping their motivation high. And so I want to preface this by saying there are no silver bullets. There is nothing you can do to make motivation a steady state, because it is just not the way human beings work. Our brains evolved in a different time and a different environment, and so we just don't have the ability to sustain really high levels of focus and attention for very long periods of time. That said, there are things that you can do that will help you sustain that focus and attention for longer and longer periods of time. And so, let's dive into those. Okay, first thing I want to say is that if you're struggling to stay focused or motivated, or if you feel like you're losing steam, don't beat yourself up about it. Don't think like, oh, I'm lazy, or I'm undisciplined, or I'm not cut out for this. Because I promise you, you are not alone. We all go through periods of low motivation. It's completely normal, and it's actually something that we need to embrace as part of the process. I remember when I was getting my bachelor's degree at BYU, I read this book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, which is actually a really good book about having the right mindset for achieving difficult goals. And one of the concepts that she talks about in that book is the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And the core of that is that if you believe that your abilities are fixed and that they don't change much over time, then when you experience setbacks or failures or struggles, you interpret those as evidence that you're not capable, whereas if you believe that your abilities are malleable and they can change over time, then when you hit those setbacks and failures, you interpret them as evidence that maybe you're not quite ready yet. But with more effort and more practice, you can achieve your goals. So, when you're feeling demotivated, try to reframe that in your mind and see it as an opportunity for growth and learning, rather than as a reflection of your inherent worth. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is planning. If you want to maintain your motivation, then planning is really important. This goes back to that whole idea of delayed gratification. Like our brains would much rather have immediate pleasure than delayed gratification. And so if you don't have any plans, if you don't have anything on your calendar, you're just going to be tempted to do other things instead of studying. So if you plan ahead of time what you're going to study and when you're going to study it, then that takes care of a lot of that friction. You know, another thing related to planning is setting goals. So, if you set both short-term and long-term goals for yourself, then when you achieve those short-term goals, then that provides a little dopamine hit, and that helps you keep going. Okay, next thing is pace yourself. don't burn out. A lot of us, I think, especially in Western culture, we really admire this idea of going hard and hustling and grinding. And I am definitely guilty of this myself in the past, where I would try to take on too much too quickly. I would bite off more than I could chew, and then I would get burned out, and then I would unfinish things. And so, I promise you from experience, it is better to do a little bit every day than to do a whole lot one day and then take a whole week off. So, if you find yourself getting overwhelmed, then dial it back, take it slower, pace yourself, do a little bit each day and just stick with it. That's always better than burning out and then having to start over again. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is minimizing distractions. So, we've all heard it before. Turn off your phone, turn off social media, go somewhere quiet, and get away from everyone. But there's a reason why we hear that advice so often is because it works. Every single time I go work from a coffee shop, I get way more done and I am way more focused than when I try to work from home. So, whatever it is for you, try to figure out what minimizes distractions and then lean into that. Also, if you're struggling to minimize distractions, then set up some boundaries. Talk to your roommates or your family members or whoever you live with and set up some boundaries around when you need quiet or when you need privacy to study. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is variety. So, we're all different. Some of us learn better when we have more structure. Other people learn better when they have more freedom. And so, if you find that you're feeling demotivated or stuck, then try shaking things up a little bit. Maybe if you've been studying from home, go to a library or a coffee shop or some other public place. Or maybe if you've been studying alone, then try studying with a group of friends, or maybe even just inviting one friend to study with you can help. Or maybe you need to take a break from studying and do something else for a little while. Maybe you need to take up a new hobby or side project that has nothing to do with school. Variety is really, really helpful. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is self-care. So, this is a big one. If you're not taking care of yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, then you are never ever going to be able to sustain motivation for very long. If you aren't sleeping enough, if you aren't eating healthy foods, if you aren't exercising, then that is going to show up in your ability to stay focused and motivated. So make sure you're taking care of yourself. And then finally, I want to say that leaning on others is a good thing. So, if you're struggling, reach out to your friends, reach out to your family, reach out to your teachers or your classmates. We're all in this together and leaning on each other is part of the journey. Alright, so those are my 8 tips for how to keep your motivation going. I hope that's helpful. Please leave a comment below with any other tips that you might have. And also, please let me know if you found this helpful. I'll see you next time. Bye.